SaaS looked like one of the cleanest, most durable business models in modern business. Build software, sell subscriptions, grow seats, increase adoption, expand accounts, stack recurring revenue. Tell investors you have a predictable cash flow and operating leverage. Collect applause from people who love a spreadsheet with a growth story attached to it. And now, suddenly, that certainty looks a little less certain because AI is forcing a much more uncomfortable question into the room. What happens if the user stops being the center of the software experience? What happens if the interface matters less? What happens if the work itself can be done by an agent that moves across systems instead of by a human living inside one application all day? That's the real question. Not whether software disappears, not whether every SaaS company goes to zero. That's lazy. The real question is whether AI starts breaking the assumptions the SaaS model was built on. And the real reason this matters right now is that the market has already started reacting like this is no longer theoretical. Reuters recently reported that software stocks were hit by a nearly $1 trillion rout after Anthropic introduced AI plugins for its Cloud Cowork agent, intensifying fears that AI tools could automate tasks traditional SaaS products were built to support. That fear was strong enough that software CEOs from Oracle and Salesforce felt the need to publicly push back on the idea that AI could mean the death of SaaS. So today we're unpacking the real issue underneath the hype, and that is, can AI actually break the SaaS model? Or is it just exposing which software companies were always more fragile than they looked? Now, when people ask whether AI can break SaaS, they usually mean one of two things. The first is simple. Can AI replace traditional software products by doing the work directly? The second is more important. Can AI make a lot of software less valuable by sitting above it, around it, or across it so that the application itself becomes less central to how work gets done? That second question is the one that matters because classic SaaS economics were built around a pretty clear set of assumptions. Humans use software directly. The application is the place where work happens. The workflow inside the tool creates stickiness. Seats create expansion, adoption creates value, and usage creates justification for renewal. That has been the model. But AI starts to challenge all of that. If an agent can summarize information, trigger workflows, write code, generate follow-ups, route work, patch vulnerabilities, build apps, and move across tools without the user having to manually live in the software, then the role of the application starts to change. And when the role of the application changes, the economics of the business starts to wobble. That's why investors have been so twitchy lately. On January 29th, Reuters reported that SAP fell more than 16% and ServiceNow dropped 11% after results and guidance deepened concerns that traditional software providers were being outpaced by AI native players. Reuters also noted that US software stocks had already posted double-digit declines over the previous year as investors worried that advances in AI, including cheaper instant app and code production, could challenge SaaS vendors selling subscription-based products. Then in cybersecurity, the reaction showed just how jumpy the market has become. Reuters also reported on February 23rd that after Anthropic launched Claude Code Security, shares of CrowdStrike, Datadog, and Zscaler fell around 11%, while Fortinet and Okta dropped roughly 6%. Palo Alto Networks fell 3%, and SentinelOne was down 5%. So this is no longer a niche debate among founders and AI obsessives. This is now a public market question. What's really happening is not that SaaS is dead or dying. That's the headline version. The internet loves those. But the real shift is more specific. AI is changing where the value lives. In the older SaaS world, value often lived in the interface. The workflow design, the reporting layer, and the convenience of getting people to operate inside one system, and the stickiness of building habits around human usage. In the emergent AI world, value shifts downward and inward. It shifts toward proprietary data. It shifts toward system of record status. It shifts toward deep workflow ownership. It shifts toward trust, governance, permissions, embeddedness, and operational dependency. It shifts toward the parts of software an AI agent still needs in order to act safely and reliably. And that's a huge deal because a lot of SaaS companies were not actually selling unique intelligence or hard to replace infrastructure. They were selling structured access to work. They were selling workflow management. They were selling a place where humans completed tasks. If AI can increasingly handle those tasks itself, then the software layer becomes more vulnerable unless it owns something deeper. That's the core issue. AI doesn't need to eliminate the software company to weaken it. It only needs to reduce how dependent the user is on the interface. Once that happens, a lot of familiar SaaS assumptions come under pressure. Seat-based pricing starts to look less obvious. Feature differentiation gets weaker. Workflow wrappers become easier to replace. Adoption looks different if fewer humans are spending time in the product itself. Expansion logic changes if incremental value comes from outcomes, orchestration, or data depth instead of more user seats. And that's why Anthropic has become such a lightning rod in this discussion. According to Anthropic's February funding announcement, Claude Code's run rate revenue has grown over 2.5 billion, more than doubled since the start of 2026. Anthropic also said business subscriptions to Claude Code have quadrupled since the beginning of the year. Enterprise use now represents over half of Claude Code revenue. And in January, it launched more than 30 products and features, including co-work and 11 open source plugins for specialist tasks like sales, legal, and finance. That matters because it signals something broader than better AI. It signals AI moving from assistant to operating layer, not just helping with software, but starting to sit across software. And once investors saw that, they started asking an ugly question. If agents can increasingly do the task, what exactly is the value of the app that is used to host the task? That is the fear behind the sell-off. People get this wrong in two completely opposite ways, though. The first mistake is the panic question. AI is going to kill SaaS. Well, probably not. Serious businesses still need systems of record. They still need permissions, governance, compliance controls, auditability, consistency, reliable data structures, secure workflows, and operational systems that do not hallucinate their way through payroll, finance, legal, or procurement. That's why even in the middle of this panic, many software leaders are making a very specific defense. Reuters reported that Oracle's Mike Cecilia argued AI would only be a threat if incumbents were not adopting it, and said Oracle is moving quickly. Salesforce, meanwhile, has emphasized its proprietary customer and sales process data, along with its position as a platform for building, deploying, and governing AI agents. Analysts told Reuters that companies with years of exclusive financial, legal, design, or technical data likely have the strongest defense. One investor put it even more bluntly: proprietary data is the deepest moat by far. That's a serious argument, and in a lot of cases, it's true. But the second mistake is just as dangerous, and that is AI is just another feature we can add. That's the complacent version. That one says add a copilot, add a summary button, add an agentic tab in the product, update the deck, and keep the same business model. That's not enough, because this is not just a feature wave. It changes the relationship between the user and the software. It changes how the work is triggered, how the value is experienced, and eventually how the pricing gets justified. That's why companies are scrambling to redefine themselves in public. Salesforce has been pushing its platform and Agentforce story. Oracle has leaned into AI-infused end-to-end processes, and Workday brought back founder Anil Busri as CEO last month to lead the company in a rapidly evolving AI era, as they put it. And Reuters noted that Workday shares had fallen by more than a third this year, even as the company argued that its systems embed 2 decades of business processes that AI cannot easily replicate. So this isn't just a question of whether companies have AI features. It's whether they can explain why their software still matters when the way users interact with software starts changing at a foundational level. And a lot of companies are going to find that those are not the same thing. This part matters because it tells you how investors are reading the shift. The market is not saying that every software company is doomed. The market is saying it no longer believes that all SaaS deserves the same multiple. That's very different. The sell off is a sorting event. The companies under pressure are the ones investors fear are too dependent on human interaction as the main source of value, shallow workflow convenience, feature based differentiation, standardized data that AI can more easily learn from or reproduce, and seed expansion as the primary growth engine. The companies getting more benefit of the doubt are the ones that look more like the systems of record, deeply embedded platforms, owner of valuable proprietary enterprise data, compliance heavy operational systems, and products with high switching costs because they sit inside real execution. Reuters captured that distinction pretty clearly. Salesforce software remains deeply embedded in corporate systems, with its real time data platform managing more than 50 trillion records. And analysts noted that many companies have built years of daily operations around Salesforce's products, making replacement pretty difficult. At the same time, Reuters also noted that AI is beginning to erode the barrier by making it easier to generate code and build applications with far less human effort and expense. That tension is the whole story. Incumbents still have moats, but those moats are being tested in a new way. And the market, being an emotionally stable institution that is repricing sectors before the long term outcome is even clear. You can see that in how far the fear spread. The software sell off did not stay neatly contained to one category, it spilled into CRM, enterprise apps, cyber, workflow software, and agent adjacent tools. Reuters also reported that Microsoft's own shares fell nearly 9% in February as concerns around AI agents and ecosystem positioning intensified. Even while Microsoft moved to integrate Anthropic models into M365 Copilot and introduce Copilot Cowork. That's what broad narrative repricing looks like. When the market gets scared of a platform shift, it starts selling categories, not just companies. Anthropic didn't invest these concerns, but it gave them a face. And that's important because markets do better when they have a visible symbol to blame. Even the underlying shift is broader than any one company. Anthropic's story is especially potent because it's not just talking about the AI in abstract terms. It's shipping products that imply agents can do more than chat. Cowork, plugins, Claude Code, security tools, enterprise penetration, specialist workflows. The whole product direction points toward AI operating across knowledge work, software creation, and task execution. That is very different from here's a chatbot inside your app. It suggests a future where software is less about navigating interfaces and more about orchestrating systems. And because Anthropic has real momentum, the market has reason to take it seriously. Its own February announcement said the number of customers spending over $100,000 annually on Claude has grown 7x in the past year, and that businesses starting with one use case were expanding Claude across their organizations. That does not prove SaaS is doomed, but it absolutely helps explain why investors are nervous. Because if the agent platforms keep improving, and if they keep expanding from coding into sales, finance, legal, security, and general business workflows, then a lot of application layer software will need to prove it's more than a UI for tasks. And that's where it gets real because you do not get paid for having a good theory about AI. You get paid for helping your company navigate it. So if you're a founder, an operator, a revenue leader, a CS leader, or a RevOps leader, even a support leader, or someone sitting anywhere near product strategy, here's what this means. First, stop treating AI like a decorative productivity frosting. Yes, it can improve productivity and efficiency. Yes, it can reduce repetitive work. And yes, it can create leverage inside support, CS services, and RevOps. But the bigger issue is strategic. You need to understand what your company actually owns. Do you own valuable data? Do you own system dependency? Do you own workflow control? Do you own trust? Do you own the place where the business actually runs? Or do you mostly own a clean interface that people currently happen to use? That distinction matters more now than it used to. Secondly, look hard at how vulnerable your product is to abstraction. If an AI agent can sit on top of your application and do most of what the user does manually, what are you still uniquely providing? And that is not a philosophical question. That is a pricing question, a roadmap question, and eventually a valuation question. Third, leaders need to rethink what expansion means. Traditional SaaS often assume more users, more seats, more licenses, more time and product. But if AI changes how much human interaction is required, then growth may need to come more from outcomes, automation, value, usage depth, workflow centrality, and embeddedness than just from pure seat count. Fourth, internal teams are going to be reshaped by the exact same forces. Customer success teams will likely do less manual coordination and more strategic intervention. Support teams will do less repetitive handling and more exception management. RevOps will move even further towards system design, workflow orchestration, and governance. Professional service teams will also be pressured to standardize delivery, compress time to value, and prove their role in retention and expansion. So even if your product escapes the first wave of disruption, your org design probably won't. Further than that, leaders need to get much more honest about category quality. Not all SaaS is equally durable. That sounds pretty obvious, but the market spent years acting as though recurring revenue alone was enough of a religion to cover a multitude of sins. Now the scrutiny is deeper. Do you have proprietary data or standardized data? Are you deeply embedded or lightly adopted? Do customers depend on you operationally, or do they just currently use you because you are convenient? Convenience is a weaker moat in an AI world. Dependency is a lot stronger, and trust is stronger. Data depth is stronger, and system control is also stronger. The future is probably not AI replaces SaaS. The future is more likely that SaaS gets rebuilt. Some categories will weaken, some will compress, some will consolidate, and some will be absorbed into broader agent layers. And some incumbent platforms will get stronger precisely because they own the hard stuff beneath the surface. And that's really the key. AI does not flatten all software equally. It punishes shallow software and rewards deeper software. It pressures workflow wrappers. It favors systems of record, proprietary data, and products embedded in real operations. It shifts the game from how many users are in your app to how critical are you in the business outcome. And that's much more of a demanding test and a much healthier one, frankly. A lot of software businesses are about to find out whether they built real infrastructure or just expensive habit loops. So with that said, can AI break the SaaS model? Yes, it can break the weaker version of it. The version built on shallow workflows, heavy human clicking, standardized data, and software that feels indispensable mostly because people are trapped inside it all day. But it probably doesn't break SaaS as a whole. It reshapes it. It forces a separation between software that is merely used and software that is truly embedded. And the next winners will not just be the companies that add AI features to the old model. They'll be the companies that become more indispensable beneath the surface, deeper in the workflow and harder to replace inside the system. So that's it for this episode of SaaS Evolved. If you found it useful, subscribe to the channel. We release new episodes like this each and every week, plus other practical videos for SaaS founders, leaders, and professionals trying to stay ahead of what's changing. Until next time, keep evolving.